Now, in other news, the Department of Correctional Services says it has dealt with important issues raised in the Public Protector's investigation report on rapist and murderer Thabo Bester's prison escape. The report has ordered the department to submit an action plan on the implementation of remedial actions. Bester escaped from the then G4S-run prison in Bloemfontein in May 2022 through what is believed to have been an escape aided by prison employees. Singabakho Nxumalo is the spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services and joins us live now. Singabakho, thank you so much for your time and good evening to you. Before we even get into the action taken, the statement that was released by the department earlier simply says that the minister is noting the report and that is all, but it's very thin on the detail about how the department is reacting to this particular report. Are you concerned?
A very good evening and thank you for having us. You will recall that the report made headlines yesterday, so we received it on the same day, and it was therefore important that we study that specific report and then pronounce ourselves. So at the time, there were quite a number of media inquiries coming through. So the worst we could do at the time was to then provide a commentary when we have not studied the report in its entirety. It was therefore necessary to acknowledge the fact that we are aware of the report, let us study it, and then comment thereafter.
So I suppose you're not done as a department studying it?
We have studied the report, but then it is still a process because now you ought to look at, in terms of the remedial actions, what the Public Protector has asked us to do, and it has given specific timelines. It is now a question of working on those. Fortunately, those do exist in our system, but it is perhaps a matter of saying, how do we then package it and make it available to the institutions that are reflected where we need to support, to provide those specific reports.
Which of those would you say are in existence now?
For instance, in terms of handling escapes, there's one that talks to that. Because I think what's happening here is that those who may have followed correctional services throughout will know that when we have an escape, we do not even wait for someone to come and ask us what's happening. We're the first to issue a statement and pronounce that we do have an escape. But with this particular case of Thabo Bester, it's a unique one because we're dealing with an incident that happened in a private correctional facility. And what made things worse, the contractor there at no point agreed or furnished us with information saying that we're dealing with an escape. They've always maintained that they were dealing with a dead body, someone having bent there. They only acknowledged or admitted to it in the week when we're due to appear before Parliament. And by then it was already late because the investigation that we had conducted made it clear that we're dealing with an escape. And the National Commissioner for Correctional Services then did declare, we went out to made a public statement and saying, here we're dealing with an escape because our investigation pointed us to that. It was only after that the contractor confirmed that. But do not find that in the report because the report is simply focusing on what we ought to have played as the Department of Correctional Services.
It's one thing to say that, but it's another, as you say. When one reads the report, for example, it says that, in fact, I'm going to juxtapose it with your statement as the department. You're saying that G4S bears significant responsibility for this incident and was tasked with ensuring that this escape did not occur. But the Public Protector's report is saying that the department's internal investigation report makes no findings in relation to your own inadequacies and delays when it comes to, the reporting of this particular matter. But instead, you're looking at the contractual lapses and breaches. Certainly here, she's not letting you get off lightly because she's saying that your officials as well should be under scrutiny.
Perhaps it's important that we go back a bit to say what was the nature of the complaint and how that complaint was structured. Was it looking at the entire escape episode or it was looking at perhaps one institution? We do know that it was looking at one institution. But then when you have to then study everything thoroughly and then pronounce yourself on it, it is then difficult to then extract one and leave the other out because everything is interlinked here. As I've said, we're dealing with an institution that firmly stated to us this was not an escape. And we had to start with our own investigation. Difficult as it was because the people that we had identified as people of interest they were being removed from the system, so we could not even access them. But we soldiered on until we made that specific pronouncement where we said this was an escape. But even our own officials did not escape that, because we're on record having said that the officials from our part that were tasked with specific responsibilities were also taken through. Hence, you also find that in the Public Protector's report saying that consequence management was taken, hence the remedial actions stop at that particular point, saying that there is nothing further to be stated there. But it is then looking at in the manner of saying, how long did we respond, or having been briefed about people making these allegations. And we've stated this even in Parliament in 2023, where we said we were receiving these reports. Hence, we kept putting pressure on the contractor and saying, you are saying to us this is a case of a dead person, but there are these reports saying to us this person escaped. Hence, now we had to rely strictly from our own investigation. And that was taking time because information was, moving all the time and people were not being made available. So it's important to state that at no point we evaded taking responsibility. We've been very clear and we've stated that our own officials that ought to have acted in a specific way were dealt with.
So are these the two that also the Public Protector is talking about?
Exactly the two. Because when you study the Public Protector's report, majority of it is what we presented in Parliament and what we made available to them. Hence, it's very important to go through thoroughly, because you are then able to pick up what else is there that perhaps may not have been covered in our report.
So I have gone through the report and your statement as well, but the questions remain, because she does talk about the fact that this was a very high profile a case, and given the criminal profile of Mr. Bester, the functionaries could have acted swiftly, and she's talking about the functionaries in your department. And when you are looking at this, the department is saying that these officials have been reassigned to alternative positions and issued with final written warnings for their failure to promptly report the case. Was this the best that the department could do?
Again, that's an important aspect, because you do not just decide that, okay, because you've done the following as an official and this is the route that we have to take. There are prescribed procedures in the public service in terms of the code of conduct. If that person doesn't fall within the band of senior management, you then follow that, looking at what the Labour Relations Act is saying in terms of how to deal with officials in case whether there's a misconduct or any other offence. You then have to follow that all the way to the end. Even with the case of one member who was part of senior management, we then have to follow the SMS handbook in terms of dealing with those. So we did not just wake up and say, because you are cited in our own investigation, therefore we are giving you final written warnings. No, it was a detailed process. We went through a number of phases, and those handling it, they then issued that particular sanction. So the department went thorough. Hence, even in the Public Protector's report, it's clear in saying that consequence management was taken against the cited officials, and the matter will rest there. Perhaps then it's a matter of saying then how to make it a point that even in future, when we pick up particular allegations, they are then acted upon urgently. But we've stated that it would have been different if perhaps we're dealing with a contractor who said to us, DCS, this is an escape, help us to find this person. But we're dealing with people who are saying, no, everything is fine, this person died, end of the story. So
as briefly then, a final question. I suppose listening to what you're saying, you're not taking this report on review at all, you're going to be implementing it?
I said we have started the report. We continue to do so, because as a matter of saying, from what a public protector has said, are we then able to respond to that? The answer is yes. And if perhaps there are areas where we may need clarity, we will approach the public protector. We have very good working relations with them. So as a department, we're clear there. Our intention is to say, whatever that may have been picked up, to say these were potential lapses or these were lapses, address them, we do so. But if there's an area that requires clarity, we'll go back to the public protector and seek that clarity. So as a department, I think we've been very clear in terms of the whole episode of this particular escape is something that disturbed us. But we have said as a department, whenever we pick up certain things that are not going right, we're the first to talk about them. But when dealing with a contractor, it's a different different matter. And fortunately, this contract is coming to an end in 2026, the other one at Kudame in 2027. And it is also in the public that we're in court with the contractor there, because we still remain resolute. We will want to terminate that contract and take over Mangaung Correctional Center.
All right, so let's hear from you then in the coming days once the report has been studied in greater detail as to what becomes the way forward. But thank you so much for bringing us up to speed there with that information. That's Singabakho Nxumalo, the spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services.